Okay, hello everyone and welcome to this stream on my custom position called Rouse Trapped Queens variant. So this is another custom position. This is actually the first custom chess position I have ever created. So I created this one in late 2017, and in this video I'm going to introduce you to the custom position, some of the key ideas, themes you'll find, as well as tactics in the position, and show you a few sample games. And I'll continue this series on theory in future videos. But basically, if we jump right into it, we can see that in this custom position, the queens are trapped, hence, which is hence the name Rouse Trapped Queens variant. So I've put these queens in red over here. So as you can see, the queens can't really get out because the pawns are blocking them. But what we can do first of all is, in this position, what white and black are going to want to do is eventually probably sacrifice to free their queen. So for example, they could white could play rook takes a2 at some point, or they could try to like move this pawn and then bring the bishop like to e2, d1, and to take on c3, or to bring the bishop like to c4 and try to take on b3 here, because if black were to take, then white's going to take on a4. So for example, that's how white would try to free their queen. So in this series on this custom position, I'm going to be showing you some theory and games in the position. So in this video, it's more about just introducing you ideas and showing you games, but I want to quickly show you why sacrificing right away is not the greatest choice. So first of all, if we play rook takes a2 in the beginning, so white tries to free their queen right away. As you can see, the engine doesn't like it very much, but here's a sample line. So white gets their queen out, so that's great. But you notice over here that black has counterplay. So after playing a move like e5, black is threatening to take on b4 with the bishop. And once black takes on b4, they can take on a5 as well. And black will have not actually sacrificed any material in order to free their queen. So they're just going to be up a lot of material. So that's also a key like concern of this position, is which side can sacrifice less or no material to free their queen, then they could obtain a material advantage when both queens are out. So you can't, you have to be very, very careful. You can't just try to go all in on freeing your queen, but you also have to play the position. And actually, if you look at the theory when I'm showing you, in a lot of the theory, it takes a while for both sides to free their queen. So continuing here, white can try to defend against that by playing queen a3, which defends b4, so black can't take and free their queen. Bishop e7, e4, this is just sample line castles, b3, e6, so the bishop pushes the queen out, the rook goes here. So now white brings a bishop to c3 now. Sorry, one second. Yeah, so black brings a bishop to c3. Great. Okay, black brings a bishop to c3, and you can see, white brings a bishop to c3, and they can protect their b4 square that way. But after bishop d8, bishop e2, and rook c6, black is ready to sacrifice a bishop to free, so they're ready to play bishop takes b6 and to free their queen. And you'll notice that white used a rook, like sacrificed a rook in order to free their queen, and black is going to be sacrificing a bishop only. So black's going to be up material here, and as you can see, black, by the computer evaluation also, black is completely winning in this position. So that's why taking with the rook right away is not the best choice. So, and that's kind of the intricacies of this position, is you have to kind of set up know when to sacrifice at the right time. So it's not just like sacrifice right away to free your queen. It's actually like a game of like trapped and freeing queens, but also using like classic chess principles such as controlling the center, developing your pieces, and so on. So quickly, I'm going to show you what happens if white tries to sacrifice their bishop right away. So in this line, white goes bishop to d1, trying to take on b3. And black can kind of copy white, but actually if black does that, you can see white just better because white had the first move. So black can go d6, and white can sacrifice their bishop right now to free their queen. And this is not that bad, but it's also not the cutting edge theory for white. And as you can see, the computer thinks black is slightly better. So bishop e6, queen a3, castles, b3, so that white can try and pick up this a2 pawn, because before the bishop was defending it. So we have b3, d5, d3, for example, takes, rook f8, castles, and rook d4. And now the stop of taking, like the threat of taking on b4 is unstoppable. And so black is going to end up like not sacrificing as much material in order to free their queen. Actually, over here the computer's saying bishop e3, rook takes b4, bishop d2. Yeah, so if you look at the material here, black is just up a bishop. However, let's see why this is a draw. It's a draw because black doesn't have time to take on a5, because white's going to play rook d8 check, and it's going to checkmate black on the back rank. So b6 and then b4 is played over here, and so actually over here, like, I guess black shouldn't take on b4 right away. But the point over here with the theory is that so obviously this is still playable for white to go for the sacrifice right away. However, it isn't the most cutting edge, and if play is perfect, black should be just slightly better. So anyways, this video over here is an introduction video and not a theory video, but I just kind of wanted to show you how like you can try to sacrifice right away, but it probably isn't the best possible choice. So over here, let me just look at this. Rook takes a3, rook d3, queen c2, rook c3, queen b2, and f6. And so in this position, it's a better continuation than when I showed before. Black has these ideas in order to take on a5. And I don't know what this arrow is doing over here, but yeah, basically to take on a5 is going to be the threat over here. White is currently defending that with the rook. However, white is currently defending that with the rook. However, if white moves around like too much, then black can take. Because like for example, black has two attackers on the a5 pawn. If black were to take like right now, white could play something like queen a2 and like pin the bishop and win material back, but white always has to be careful of that. Black has threats on b3, and so although white freed their queen, black has a lot of pressure. Actually, the evaluation has gone to drawn over here, so perhaps this wasn't the best choice by black, but as you can see, especially with the bishop sacrifice, white can do it. It's just that black gets a lot of counterplay and pressure after. So I'm going to go into an example game now. So so here's the first example game. This was a game played in 2018. And in this 2018, you can see that so here's how the game started. Before e5, bishop e2, bishop e7. I opted to go for pawn to d3 over here. Castles, and bishop d1. So you can see in this game I took the strategy of trying to sacrifice my bishop right away. Not my rook, but trying to sacrifice my bishop right away. And in this game you can see that so I was able to take bishop e6, played queen d1. In this position actually black, I didn't guard that black kind of had d5 over here. And I could try to play bishop d2, but after after takes, rook f8, and you can see that that black is having a lot of pressure. This bishop is pinned, but it also is trying to defend, b4. And also trying to defend b4, so I'm going to have a lot of pressure. The rook is also trying to come to d4 and to take on b4, so my opponent could have taken advantage of my mistake over here to sacrifice early, but my opponent opted to go for f5 and play over there. So my opponent wasn't trying to sacrifice to free their queen right away, and you'll see this is what happens if they don't do that right away. So in this position, we have f4, so they tried to gain some space on the king side. I countered with e4, brought my queen into the center, and you can see over here I defended b4 very well, but my opponent is threatening to sacrifice on b6. However, that's not really a concern for me because, so here I traded off the bishops. So that's like another thing with this position. You'll notice over here that my my dark squared bishop, it's on the same color square as the as my pawns over here. So as my pawns. And in order to free my queen, I had to sacrifice my light squared bishop. But for my opponent to free their queen, so for black to free their queen, they're going to have to sacrifice their dark squared bishop. And so in many cases, if I can trade off my opponent's dark squared bishop like as white, then that's good for me because I traded off the bishop that they could use to sacrifice to free their queen. And vice versa, if my opponent trades off the light squared bishops, like as if black trades off the light squared bishops, then lots of times that's good for black. So now after this sacrifice, I'm making sure that if black ever frees their queen, I'll be up in exchange because I sacrificed a bishop to free my queen, but my opponent has no choice but to sacrifice a rook. So I played rook fc1, bishop c4. As you can see, my opponent is not sacrificing a rook in this game. They're trying to play with the pieces on the board that are there. They don't want to sacrifice more material than me. So at this point, I'm completely winning because black can't free their queen, and if they do, they'll be down in exchange. So I tried to simplify the game. I took on a2 finally, because if the bishop takes, then I have rook takes g7. So I was able to take that pawn, which was kind of preventing my rook from moving. So now I should be able to mobilize my rook, and I'll just be even more winning. So I brought my rook to c3, d3, and my opponent finally realized that if they do nothing, if they do absolutely nothing, then what's going to happen is I'm going to be winning the game, because now I have two rooks and a queen. They have two rooks and a bishop, if we don't count their trapped queen on a6. So my opponent finally sacrificed, but it was too late because now I also end up with this a7 pawn, which is going to be an asset. So after my opponent traded off, they actually just resigned because I have rook b8 threats and to promote this pawn, as well as even if I didn't have that pawn to promote, I'm just up in exchange. So you can see that in this game I tried to sacrifice my bishop right away, and that's actually that's even a pretty decently good strategy. But my opponent, if they had played it completely accurately, they would have been able to have a decent position too. But they didn't, and I was able to show how sacrificing a bishop to free my queen is very good. If my opponent is not able to ever sacrifice their bishop to free their queen, or to just free their queen without sacrificing anything, then I'll be up material. So that's game one. So game two is actually very interesting. Game two shows a very interesting tactic. Shows a very interesting tactic in the what's your decision. I'm sorry, in the that was my last custom position I was showing on this channel, in the Rouse Trap Queen's variant position. So this was in 2018 as well. This is actually from a tournament that was created in my position. So this was a correspondence chess tournament in this custom position. So the opening was e4, e5 again. So one thing to note is that this isn't the only opening in this position, but back in 2018 I didn't really know that much theory in my position, so I would start with the most logical thing I could find. So in this position you will see I played the same opening. This time I castled instead of playing bishop d1. My opponent again struck on the king side with f5. I took in there, and after they took with their rook, they're activating their rook. I played bishop d1 to free my queen. my opponent played d5 to gain some central control, which was the idea with this f5 move, but the computer didn't like it too much. So over here, I should have just sacrificed my bishop over here on b3, but I didn't. I decided that my opponent's center was very strong. I want to break it down, so I played f4. E takes f4, rook takes f4, and bishop takes f4. And here's a very interesting tactic in this position. So you'll notice that when the bishop is on c1, like it is over here before it took the rook, this b2 square is very well protected. But when I take on f4, and notice that this bishop is staring at my queen. So there's actually this very interesting tactic, queen takes a5. And this can be played in reverse with queen takes a4 if it can be played queen takes a4 a4 if I have a bishop staring directly at this queen. So my light squared bishop is staring at this queen, and black's light squared bishop is not on c8. So that's, it could work in that, not every case like that, but in many cases like that it works. So over here my opponent found the tactic, and they basically, the idea is if I play bishop to d2 and like don't take, then my opponent will just take on b6 with check, and they'll have freed their queen for free. So I have to take, and then after bishop takes a3, the point is that when I had a bishop on c1, when my bishop was on c1, I could afford to take on a3 with the b pawn because my opponent can't play b2, forcing like a promotion, because my bishop would just take it. So now when I take, my opponent plays b2, and I don't have a bishop on c1 to take b2. So now even if I take a2, my opponent promotes a queen, and they're able to win the game, which they did. So I just quickly go through. That was the tactic that won the game, and they actually checkmated me here. So if we go all the way back over here, one thing I could have tried was to play bishop c1, or even bishop e5. The computer likes, but after bishop b4, you'll see that my opponent is going to take these pawns, and they also always have their pawns to threaten promotion, and my rook is kind of trapped over here as well. So my opponent should be better here. So yeah, that's one tactic you always want to look out for. So as white, that'd be queen takes a4, black, that'd be queen takes a5, and you want to do that. It doesn't always work, but you want to do it when you have a bishop staring at your opponent's queen, and also your opponent's bishop is no longer on c8 for black, or for white, your bishop is no longer on c1. C1, and is no longer on c1, and your opponent's bishop is staring over here. So that was just a game to show the tactic. And I have two more example games to show. So this one. This was a very recent game that I played, and actually I want to congratulate my opponent because we played in another tournament in this position, another corresponding chess tournament, and although my opponent was much lower rated than me, and at this point I did no theory in this position, my opponent still beat me. So I want to go through this game. It was very interesting. So my opponent started with e3, which is not a move that I prepared for, but after e5 and d4, so my opponent is still trying to grab space in the center. I played bishop e7, just gambiting my e5 pawn, because the idea is if they take it, then after bishop d8, I basically gained a tempo in order to try to take on b6. As you can see over here, this kind of is a tough position. The computer does not like this for the same reasons as probably something after here. There's bishop e3, and yeah, same thing. So my queen's going to kind of be stuck to guarding my b5 pawn because this bishop is attacking it. And actually this position is really bad because I can't play d6 and bishop d7 because there's a pawn on e5. So actually over here I already made a big error. Oh, and also the computer likes like probably rook d1, and then rook d6 is gonna kick my queen out of a6, and then my b5 pawn's gonna fall, and my opponent's gonna get their queen freed without any issues. So Actually, at this point, I was already losing, but I think my opponent, yeah, my opponent did not take it. So they were, I guess they were convinced by the idea I had with the sacrifice, and they didn't want to accept it. So bishop d3, um, sacrifice it again with bishop d8, and again, that's probably not a good idea. But my opponent was convinced that my idea was a good idea, so they played bishop d2, and I took, and they didn't take back. I think they were looking to get their king to safety, maybe. I think this seems fine, but they decide to castle. And now I take on b6, and oh yes, over here they could have taken back, and my queen will be free. And as you can see, this position is still decently good for white, as this b5 pawn, like me defending, it's going to be kind of hard, but in this position they sacrificed a pawn over there, and I can now play like something like d5 and bishop e7, so defending it with the bishop, so I can maybe move my queen, as well as I can take on a7 with my rook pretty easily, so this should be fine for me. And then my opponent, instead of taking the bishop, they played queen takes a4. So this is interesting. So this is like the tactic that I was showing you in the last game. However, like my opponent's the white bishop is staring at my queen, and it's staring at my queen, and my bishop is, but my bishop is on c8, you'll notice. And not only is my bishop on c8, my light squared bishop, but I've taken one of my opponent's pawns already with my bishop. So this is actually a large mistake. So I played the right move, bishop takes a4, bishop takes a6, and you'll notice over here I can play b takes a6 because I already took the b6 pawn, but if my opponent still had a b6 pawn, they could not play b7 because my bishop would be here to take it. But my opponent takes that bishop as well. So actually in this, so they sacrificed the queens and then they took the bishop. But you'll notice over here that actually I'm up a pawn because of when my opponent sacrificed the d4 pawn. And I should be winning this game, but my opponent did find a way to win this. So I took on e3, which as you can see was a blunder. Instead, I should have done, I should have played bishop b7 and tried to consolidate my pieces, because as you can see over here, my opponent has two strong pawns over here. My king is still in the center, and my pieces are all undeveloped. So same principles as standard chess apply here, where you want to develop your pieces over just taking pawns, and also taking the e3 pawn opens up the center. So I didn't follow the standard chess principles, and that ended up costing me. So now I try to develop my pieces. Bishop d4, castle, so I'm starting to get my development in. Bishop c5. Over here, my opponent like moved their bishop twice, and now I have the advantage again. But over here, they played bishop d6. And so over here is my error. So I should have gone over here like rook e2 and try to take b6 that way, but I brought my bishop in. My idea was basically to bring my bishop to b1, and then play a3, and then like a takes, and like have a pawn promotion, and like take this rook in the corner. But my bishop is like defending this diagonal, which is important because my opponent is trying to push their pawns. But so when I played a3 over here, they actually played this move, which is very nice, rook e2. So if I take, they can just take back. So over here, actually, I'm still winning though. So I messed up with this one. Yeah. So if I'm thinking now, if I played, I wonder if bishop c2 would have worked over here. No, just rook takes. So the computer wanted me to go somewhere like bishop d5 and basically not take, but I miscalculated that I could play bishop b8 over here because my opponent has b2. After my bishop is gone from this diagonal, then my opponent's pawns can march, and my opponent is faster than me, so I took. My opponent captured and promoted to a queen. Now if I promote to a queen, I'm going to get checkmated in one, so I had to play h6. Opponent took, and they played bishop e5, which guards this diagonal. So now if I promote to a queen, my opponent is just going to take it. And so my opponent won. So you can see the tactical nature of this position. and you can see that was where the queen sacrifice didn't work, but I didn't play the position very well. After that, I took my bishop off of this diagonal that had to be on, and I didn't develop my pieces enough. I didn't bring my rooks to attack instead, and I ended up going for this bishop b1 move, which just lost to b7. Okay, one more game, and then that will be it for this introduction video. So the last game. So this was actually this was a friendly game, so this was not like a tournament game or anything. It was just friendly, and it was a live chess game. So I think this was a 15-minute game plus 10-second increment game that I played against a very strong variance player. So over here, when you go into theory, you'll see that g3 is actually a very good move, and actually I really like this move. So now going away from e4, e5 games or e3, like those types of games, we have g3. And actually in this position, this game I actually did lose. So you can see I haven't had the best success in this variant. But I basically outplayed my opponent in the opening, and it shows some very interesting ideas that it's going to show up in the theory that I'm going to show in future videos. So g3, e5, bishop g2, e6, d3. So over here, I'm not like completely controlling the center with my pawns. However, I'm bringing my bishop to a nice diagonal, and so bishop e7 and bishop e3. So I am defending against this diagonal if my opponent tried to sacrifice their bishop, and the key difference is I've developed my bishop to g2 instead of trying to sacrifice to free my queen. But I don't have to sacrifice right away if I can keep my opponent from not sacrificing. So here my opponent plays bishop e6, played rook c1, and d5. So d5 is a move that's trying to go for d4, which would cut off my bishop, and then my opponent could maybe sacrifice their own. Also, queen takes a5 ideas are here because my bishop, remember, it's not on c1, it's on e6 now. So there could be those ideas as well. However, in this position, I played rook c1 so that I could play bishop c5 over here. And this was a really good move as I made sure that my bishop will never be blocked because now it's in front of these pawns and it's defending this diagonal. So my opponent played bishop g5 attacking my rook, and I played e3. They played rook c8. I could have castled here. I decided to play 4. Takes bishop h4, king d2. So there's not enough pieces right now. So I think my king is safe in the center still. f5, and so over here I think my opponent should have played like maybe at some point e5, just because my opponent would like to defend these pawns from me sacrificing. But when I played, I was really happy to get d4 in this position because my bishop defends against sacrifices over here, and my opponent's bishop is cut off. It's cut off from defending. So now this whole game, so we're on move 11. I haven't really tried to sacrifice to free my queen. I've just tried to consolidate the position in the center and gain an advantage. So you see my bishop defends over here, my opponent's bishop does not, and now I can work on sacrificing. So the computer thinks his position's equal. I would disagree, though they think this was a mistake. But the reason why I'm better over here is that I can bring my bishop. So I brought my bishop to f3 and down to d1. And now I'm going to sacrifice on b3 next move, and my opponent doesn't have a sacrifice, so I should just win over here. But my opponent takes. I took with the rook, and after taking, now they have this move d4, which reconnects the defense of these pawns. So my opponent was very resourceful here. However, once I take, I'm up a pawn, and I should hopefully win this game. Then my opponent played rook a8. So in this position, they realized that if they're going to sacrifice, they're going to have to sacrifice a rook. I played bishop e2, which is probably not the most accurate, but here's the critical moment. After rook takes a7, I thought that I could play bishop takes b5. My opponent takes, and I take over here, and then they have to guard this pawn with queen a6 or something, and then eventually I could sacrifice and if they guard the pawn with a6, and I can just take on a4, and I'll have a queen and a rook versus a queen and bishop, so it'll be one of those positional advantages. However, my opponent brought the queen in, and before I promoted, but before I could do anything, I just got mated. So my king weakness did show up. So in this position, actually, instead of taking on b6, b5. I didn't realize that if I take with a7, first of all, my opponent can't take because I'm going to go and play bishop takes b5, and then I'm going to get my queen out. However, so let's see, bishop d5. Rook e1, and I thought that my opponent could play something like bishop c6, so now they can take on a7 and not drop the b5 pawn. However, after d5, we have something like bishop e8. I actually have this. I have the queen takes a4 tactic as well. That's something that could work as well. Just d6, bishop c6, bishop d1. Oh, my opponent just wants, like the computer just wants me to sacrifice my bishop and gain the positional advantage that way. So I shouldn't have rushed this. But if I even play queen takes a4 over here, yeah, because now I'm threatening to promote over here, and it's unstoppable. So yeah, this position is a very tactical position as well as a very positional position. As you can see in this final testing, so if this final sample game I've showed, I use positional ideas in this opening in order to get my bishop to defend my pawns and restrict my opponent's bishop. And then I was able to try to go for a sacrifice, but my opponent had counterplay, and then tactics showed up, and I just evaluated the tactics and ended up getting checkmated with 2 queens on the board, mind you. So that is it for the introduction video. I went over the key concepts of this position. Let me just reiterate. So the key concepts are freeing your queen. You could either do it with the rook, has sometimes worked, but most times not. Or like your light squared, or like your light squared bishop if you're white, and your dark squared bishop if you're black. You want to control the center, develop your pieces, and if your opponent frees their queen, these pawns are going to be weak, so b4 for white, b5 for black. And also because white, if they're using a bishop to sacrifice, which in most cases that happens, it's white's light squared bishop that's used to sacrifice black's dark squared. So if you're white and you trade off the dark squared bishops, then that should be a good trade for you in most cases. And for black, if you trade off the light squared bishops, that should be a good trade for you. And yeah, you can sacrifice to free your queen. Like, you can just go for that right away with the bishop, or like the rook is kind of not the greatest, but with the bishop it works too. But there's other theory that actually gives white a slight edge. Like if white tries to take sacrifice right away, I think it should be around equal. Black has lots of counterplay, but in the upcoming videos I'm going to be going over theory in this position, and the theory will consist of many different ideas and areas to gain a slight positional edge. So this custom position, I like it because it's very the ideas are very positional, but it quickly becomes tactical. So you use these positional ideas, but the game is going to turn into tactics at some point inevitably, as are most of these trap positions. Yeah, I don't only make trap positions. I know these first two, what's your decision, and Rouse trap queens variant, are trap positions, but I'll also be going over theory and other positions I have in the future as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll post a video. I'll start with theory in this position very, very soon. Thanks for watching.